Hey everybody, Chris Lipper on the bus, small business owner coaching, and we're at our Thursday hub meeting. And Rich Beyer is our presenter today, and we're going to learn everything you wanted to know about marketing and branding. Go ahead, Rich.
So I'm going to talk to you about branding. I am not a marketer. What I
Okay.
do is I create the materials for marketing people. So if I can, may I share do I have access to the share screen, Chris?
You have access to anything you want.
I love you, babe.
All right.
How's this? Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay,
We're seeing all the icons on the left. There's a way to get rid of that.
like that.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
All right. So, welcome to my branding, my 10-minute primer, if you will. There's a lot to be said about branding, and I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm going to try to keep it sweet, and I'm going to try to keep it relevant. So let's start off with what do we mean by when we say branding? How do we define that? The way I define branding, it's the 1,000 touch points your company has with the world. So people think, oh, I've got a logo, I've got my branding in order. Well, your logo is a piece of your branding for certain, but what about the fonts that you use? If you're a creative shop and you're using like a real stuffy formal font like a Times New Roman, there's going to be a disconnect there, in my opinion. So branding is everything. It's the way your phones are answered. It's the quality of the images that you're using in your correspondence. Are there typos in your correspondence? That's a part of your branding, and that's not necessarily a good thing because people will think to themselves, if this person can't take the time to get their spelling correct, how are they going to get my branding correct? So once again, everything that is an outreach from your company is what I refer to as your branding. And what's your brand story? People talk about that a lot, but the brand story. The brand story is what people are saying about your business when you're not there. So, this is how how your business is discussed. And I'm always of the mindset that who's controlling that narrative? Are you controlling that narrative, or are you just letting the marketplace control that? So I'm always of the mindset that being in touch or being in control of that narrative is very important. And when we talk about brand messaging, that's really the tone of voice, if you will, the way that the your message is communicated. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. But what I want to talk about first of all, before we go further, are a couple things that some branding events that were significant on this date in history. So number one, we had the company Wham-O, toy company, and they purchased the they acquired the Pluto platter. The Pluto platter was then renamed as the Frisbee, and the rest is history, as it were. So that was in January 23, 1957. This happened. Let's move ahead. January 23rd, 1986. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had its first induction on in 1986. Now, the building itself was not completed until 1995, but the brand itself was created and established for inductees, and these inductees included Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, James Brown, Ray Charles, and others.
Those were the
But
people that were inducted on this day.
that's correct. In
Wow.
1986. So
Mm.
that was the first induction that was in New York City. And as we know, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame does live in Ohio, Cleveland. And I have been there, and it's an awesome place. And if you've not been there, it's definitely worth going. Another thing that happened on this date in history was 2 years ago in 2023 is Microsoft invested boatloads of money into OpenAI, or ChatGPT as it's better known. And this actually put chat on the map in a very real way, and it caused all these other chat wannabes to spring up. So this was a real significant event because of having the weight of Microsoft behind that. So that was pretty cool. let's talk about um let's talk about messaging. Messaging is the clearest way to get people to get your message across, right? Or how you get that across. So one of the best ways I've found is if you see this sign, you know exactly what you're in for. You know that you're going to get yourself that sex on the beach, that cosmopolitan, that super dry martini with a couple of olives or whatever it is you're looking for. So I just think that this is one of the clearest forms of marketing that and branding that's ever been. So let's talk about, I talked a little bit about before about you know, logos and taglines. Taglines are super, super important because your logo may not tell the world a whole lot, but the tagline really sums it up. Here's one of my favorites. This is a little older, L'Oreal, because you're worth it. So, what does that tell you as a customer? It tells you that this is going to be an expensive product, obviously, but it's okay because you're worth it. How many people in life tell you that you're worth it? Now, obviously, they've got a vested stake in this, but obviously, it's worked well for them. Here's another one of my favorites from the past. Clairol, does she or doesn't she? Our product is so good that only a professional can tell the difference between whether it's your real hair color or whether it's a Clairol. So I just thought that was brilliant. We have another Old Spice, the original. 2008 came along and they decided to add a little twist of a rebrand. And what they added was that if your grandfather hadn't worn it, you wouldn't exist. So I just adore that because it just takes something that we all take for granted. And right. So what I want to touch on now are some rebrands from 2024. Rebranding. Why would a company rebrand? A lot of reasons. Did the original branding that was created way back when support the company that is now? Maybe yes, maybe not. But if not, that's a good reason to rebrand. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of rebranding that took place in 2024. And who can point out one of the commonalities that we're seeing between the rebrand of Johnson & Johnson, Eddie Bauer, Balmain, and Airbnb? Shout it out if you spot it.
Script.
Cursive?
Yeah, flow. Flow
I'm
of
sorry?
the pen
The
doesn't
print.
flow. Script.
Cursive.
So we had this iconic Johnson & Johnson script, and they went down to this plain sans serif font.
Oh, it went that way. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Balmain went from this kind of stylized to a sans serif font.
So now
Eddie
it's
Bauer,
bold.
Eddie Bauer from a stylized script to a sans serif font. Airbnb went from a stylized to a sans serif font. What is this? It's actually a process called in branding called blanding. Blanding. And what it is when all these companies are jumping on this bandwagon of getting their logos very sleek and very modern. Unfortunately, in my opinion, a lot of these companies are throwing throwing away the baby with the bathwater. I mean, that Johnson and Johnson script, that's been forever. It's been ubiquitous your whole life, right? All of a sudden now it's gone. So you go to the store, you don't see that anymore. You see something that looks like it, but same thing with Eddie Bauer and all these. It's an attempt to modernize, but in a sense, it's also getting rid of a lot of the characteristics that set those brands apart. So rebranding is not always a good thing. As a matter of fact, um, Lord and Taylor went the opposite route. They recently went from a very sans serif font back to their stylized script that made them famous in, from the 1800s forward. Anyway, here's the last of the rebrands that I want to talk about of the major rebrands. Pepsi went the opposite direction. Pepsi went from this very clean, small letter or smalls, very very rounded to a bold, chunky font. And I don't know. Pepsi seems to have been having an identity crisis because their logo just keeps changing all the time. Whereas Coke just stays the course. Coca-Cola. And let's not even go back to 1986 when New Coke came out, because that's just a whole conversation of itself that in futility, if you will, in my opinion. So now I'd like to shift a little bit, staying with rebranding. But Chris had brought up a point when he and I were talking, and he said, "Can my people afford you?" And I thought to myself, well, that's a great question. So let me talk to you about a brand that I just finished working with. And this is a woman that had a number of services that she offered, including podcasting. She found that 90 plus percent of her income was coming from the podcasting aspect of her business. So she wanted to rebrand and focus on that so that she was exploiting where her money was coming in from. So the first job for me was to come up with a logo. Well, I, in my fastidious way, came up with zillions of options for her because when coming up with an identity for a client, it's important to figure out what they're attracted to, what their style is, all that kind of good stuff. And so I had to kind of go all over the map from very, you know, busy to very clean and very not so busy, just to get a sense of what was going to work best for her. One of the things that is very important to me for clients to know is that I do not limit revisions. And some of the other people out in the room might be cringing as I say that, but the reason I do that is because you're coming to me for something special. If I only give you three options and say you have to pick from that, well, to me, that's just BS. Okay. It means that I'm not willing to put the time and effort into it. I want to make sure that the client is getting as many options as possible so that they have the best chance of getting exactly what they want. And that's what you're coming to me for in the first place. So here I gave her a whole lot of options. These colors you'll see are consistent because those were her colors to start with, this red, blue, green. Okay, the RGB colors themselves. So we went through this whole bunch of different of logos to start with, and you can see we started kind of moving into the microphone and getting that was more to her liking. And finally what we came up with as the final logo for her was this. And this was after a period of time. It's now her standard logo. And from there, we went into creating the website, which again, of course, is built on WordPress. The reason for that is so that your site will be exponentially expandable and scalable as you grow, so that you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. And Chris said to me again, he said, "Is this affordable?" I can't tell you if this is affordable for you or not, but this project from start to finish was $3,500. So that gives you a sense of the way I work. Um,
So, Rich,
I
that was
want
for everything, the logo, the website, the brand, everything.
correct, correct. I don't charge for phone calls. If you have an issue with GoDaddy, I'll take care of that. I'll get on the phone with them. Why? Because I know the language. I know that I know the shortcuts, and it's going to be a lot less frustrating for me than it will be for you, and that kind of thing. So, I just want people to be taken care of. I still have from 25 years ago. I have my first client still. I was just in touch with her 2 days ago, 3 days ago. She had some updates take for me to take care of, and um, and that's how I roll, my friends. Once you're in, and you're part of my family. I take care of you like you're gold. And that being said, this is my contact information. Please feel free if you have any needs, desires, or conversations you want to have with me about branding. I'd be more than happy to. And thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much for the group, for your time, and appreciate everybody.
Thank you, Rich. That was great.
Thank
All
you.
right. You want to stop
Chris, I got
sharing?
to ask you a question. You asked for meat on the bones. Did I give you meat on the bones?
You gave me some meat on the bones. You actually did a great job. Why don't you stop sharing so we can then see you better? Yeah, so I liked the examples that you gave of the old logos modernizing. I'm not going to critique your presentation. I thought it was great. I would have liked to have seen more. I guess I am going to critique your presentation. I would have liked to have seen more pricing examples. Did he just kick himself out?
No, but do you want to turn off the recording?
Thank you.
Yeah,